She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You are cut off. Completely. Don't call me. Don't show up. Don't expect a single dime." I didn't say a word. I just nodded, picked up my coffee mug, and walked out the door. 48 hours later, my phone showed 58 missed calls, and a lawyer, her lawyer, was leaving me voicemails, voice cracking, begging me to pick up. I didn't answer. Not yet, because I had been waiting for this moment for almost 3 years.
My name is Mike. And this is the story of how my sister-in-law, Tiffany, tried to erase me and accidentally handed me everything. Let me take you back 3 years. My wife, Claire, and I had been married for 11 years. We built a life together from nothing. I'm talking 2 people sharing a 1-bedroom apartment, eating ramen 4 nights a week, driving a car that needed duct tape on the passenger window to keep the wind out. I worked as a commercial electrician. Claire was a dental hygienist. We saved every dollar we could. And after 8 years of grinding, we had enough to buy a small but beautiful piece of land in rural Tennessee, 40 acres, a creek running through the back, and an old farmhouse that needed serious work. That land became everything to us. We spent summers fixing it up. Planted fruit trees. Built a fence. Turned that farmhouse into something we were genuinely proud of. And then Claire's father, Frank, got sick. Stage 3 lung cancer. Diagnosed out of nowhere. Frank was one of those men who never slowed down, retired railroad worker, hunter, could fix anything with his hands. Watching him shrink was one of the hardest things I ever witnessed. Claire became his primary caregiver. She quit her job. I picked up extra shifts to cover us. We drove to his house in Memphis 3 times a week, sometimes more. I helped Frank shower. I sat with him during chemo. I drove him to every single appointment for 2 years while Tiffany, Claire's younger sister, posted beach vacation photos on Instagram. Tiffany never came. Not once during the hard part. But oh, she showed up the moment things got serious. When Frank's condition got critical, Tiffany suddenly reappeared. She flew in from Arizona with her boyfriend Gary, and within 48 hours, she had completely taken over the house. She reorganized Frank's medications. She started fielding calls from his doctor, without telling Claire. She had long private conversations with Frank in his bedroom with the door shut. And one evening, I walked into the kitchen and caught a slice of conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. Tiffany was on the phone. She didn't see me. And she said very quietly, "Just make sure your name is on the paperwork before he can't sign anymore." I froze. I backed out of the kitchen and said nothing to Claire that night. I didn't want to cause panic. But I started paying very close attention. Frank passed away 7 weeks later. It was a Thursday morning. Peaceful at home, with Claire holding his hand. 2 days after the funeral, Tiffany called a family meeting at Frank's house. She sat us down in the living room and slid a manila folder across the coffee table. "Dad changed his will," she said. Flat. No emotion. Like she was presenting a quarterly report. "About a month before he passed. I helped him with it. He decided to leave the property and his accounts to me, to keep it in the family bloodline." Claire went pale. "Bloodline? Mike is family." Tiffany smiled. Not a kind smile. A practiced one. "He's not a blood relative, Claire. Dad wanted his assets to stay with his actual children. It's his right." Claire started shaking. I put my hand on her knee. "There's also a clause," Tiffany continued, opening the folder, "that specifies any shared assets between you and Mike, specifically the Tennessee property, will be reviewed, since it was partially funded through Dad's financial help over the years." That was a lie. Frank had never given us a dime for that land. We had the records to prove it. But in that moment, none of that mattered because Claire was in grief and Tiffany knew it. And then Tiffany said the 7 words that started all of this. She looked right at me and said, "Mike, you are cut off from this family. Completely." She meant it as a warning. As a dismissal. She was telling me I had no seat at the table, no claim to anything, no voice in what happened next. You are not Frank's son. You are not a relative. You are a guest who has overstayed his welcome. And honestly, I've been talking to a lawyer, and your involvement in Dad's care, the accounts, the medications, the decisions, it's going to be looked at very carefully. She was threatening me, implying that my caregiving could somehow be reframed as manipulation or financial abuse. It was monstrous. It was also calculated. Claire stood up. Tiffany, stop. Sit down, Claire. I love you, but you've been blinded by this man for 11 years. Dad saw it. I see it. And now that Dad's gone, I'm the one who's going to protect what's ours. Claire looked at me. Her eyes were devastated. Not because she believed Tiffany, but because she knew her sister well enough to know this was only the beginning. I picked up my coffee mug from the table. I stood up calmly. And I walked out the front door without saying a word. Because here's the thing Tiffany didn't know. She didn't know what I had done 6 months earlier. She didn't know about the conversation I had with Frank, alone, in his bedroom, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, when he was still clear-headed and strong enough to sit up straight. She didn't know what Frank had asked me to do, or what I had quietly put into motion. She had just cut off the one person in that room who was holding all the cards. And she had no idea. Over the next 2 weeks, Tiffany moved fast. She hired an estate attorney, a sharp one, a guy named Douglas, well known in Memphis legal circles. She filed paperwork to take full control of Frank's estate. She sent letters to Claire suggesting she sign over any potential claims, to avoid a messy legal battle. She tried to freeze a joint savings account that Claire and Frank had maintained for years. And then she made her biggest mistake. She sent a certified letter to our Tennessee address, the land we owned free and clear, claiming that the property had been partially funded by estate assets, and demanding we submit financial records or face a legal challenge to our ownership. She was coming after our home, our land, the thing Claire and I had built with our own hands, with our own money, 3 years of sacrifice. That letter was the moment I stopped being patient. Here's what Tiffany never knew. 6 months before Frank passed, he called me into his bedroom. It was a Tuesday, raining hard outside. Claire had run to the pharmacy, and it was just the two of us. Frank said to me, "Mike, I know what Tiffany is doing. I'm sick, not stupid." He told me he'd seen her taking photos of his financial documents. He'd overheard her calls. He knew she was positioning herself. And then he said, "I want to protect Claire. I want to protect what you two have built. But I can't let Tiffany know what I'm doing, she'll fight it. So I need you to trust me, and I need you to do something for me quietly." What Frank did next changed everything. With the help of his longtime personal attorney, not the one Tiffany had recommended, but his own guy, a man named Robert who had handled Frank's affairs for 20 years, Frank quietly executed a series of legal instruments. First, he signed a notarized affidavit confirming that he had never contributed financially to our Tennessee property. Not $1. It was witnessed by Robert and a notary. Signed, sealed, and stored with Robert's firm. Second, he created a separate trust. A small one, but specific. In it, he placed a collection of items, his grandfather's watch, some personal letters, a few family heirlooms, and designated me as the trustee. Why? Because it established my legal relationship to his estate and gave me standing. Robert's idea. A smart one. Third, and this is the one that changed everything, Frank had quietly kept a secondary life insurance policy. Not the big one Tiffany knew about. A smaller policy, taken out years ago, that nobody knew existed. It had been auto-drafted from an old checking account for decades. The beneficiary on that policy? Claire. And only Claire. Not split with Tiffany. Not part of the estate. Directly to Claire, outside of probate, untouchable. The value of that policy? $480,000. Robert had that policy number. I had a copy in a safety deposit box. and neither Tiffany nor her attorney had any idea it existed. But here's where I had to be careful. If I showed my hand too early, Tiffany's lawyer might find ways to complicate things, challenge the policy, drag us into court, make the process expensive and painful. So Robert and I agreed, we wait. We let Tiffany overplay her hand. We let her lawyers rack up billable hours on a case that was going nowhere. And we watched. We didn't have to wait long. Tiffany's attorney, Douglas, filed a formal challenge to our property ownership exactly 19 days after that certified letter arrived. It was aggressive, detailed, and completely hollow. Every claim rested on the assumption that Frank had contributed to our land purchase. Robert responded swiftly with Frank's notarized affidavit. Signed by Frank himself. Witnessed. Dated 6 months prior. Douglas went silent for 3 days. Then the calls started coming to me directly. Day 1, 4 calls. Day 2, 11 calls. I let them go to voicemail. His messages got progressively more tense, first professional, then pleading, then almost frantic. But I still didn't answer. Not yet. Because in the background, Robert had filed the insurance claim. The policy company verified everything. Claire's identity, the beneficiary designation, the policy's validity. It was airtight. Frank had maintained that policy for 23 years. The check was being processed. Meanwhile, Tiffany had no idea the ground was crumbling beneath her. She'd spent heavily on Douglas. She'd been so confident. She already started telling people in the family that she was getting the estate sorted. She'd let it slip at a cousin's birthday party that she expected to sell Frank's Memphis house and collect nearly $200,000. She had already spent money she didn't have yet. And now her attorney was calling me 58 times in 48 hours because he had figured out, too late, that the case against our property was dead on arrival. And worse, he had just learned about the secondary insurance policy from the carrier directly, during a routine estate search. He knew what it meant. He knew Tiffany was about to find out that $500,000 had existed all along, and that she'd gotten none of it. That's when I finally answered. Call number 59. I picked up on the second ring. Douglas, I said. Very calm. There was a pause. Then he said, Mike. Thank you for picking up. I think we need to talk about resolving this without going any further. I agree, I said. Let's talk. I could hear it in his voice. The resignation. The quiet understanding that his client had lost before the first real shot was fired. Robert joined the call, and within 4 minutes, Douglas had confirmed he was recommending Tiffany drop all claims against our property immediately. No counterclaims. No ongoing litigation. Clean withdrawal. In exchange, I agreed not to pursue a legal challenge to the way Tiffany had influenced Frank's will changes, even though Robert had told me privately we likely had a case for undue influence. I didn't want the money. I wanted it over. I wanted Claire to be free. The property challenge was dropped by end of business that Friday. The insurance check arrived the following Tuesday. $480,000. Made out to Claire. She sat at our kitchen table in Tennessee and stared at that check for a long time. Then she said very quietly, He knew. He knew what she was going to do. He did, I said. He just made sure she couldn't. Tiffany found out about the insurance policy 3 days after we received the check. Apparently Douglas told her in person. I wasn't there, but a cousin who was described it later. Tiffany sat very still. Didn't cry. Didn't yell. She just said, He planned this. And then walked outside and didn't come back in for an hour. She never called me. She never apologized to Claire. Not then, not after. What she did do, about a month later, was send a text to Claire. 3 words. Can we talk? Claire showed it to me. I told her it was her choice. Always her choice. Claire typed back. Not right now. I need more time. And she put her phone down and went back to watering her garden. Here's what I want you to understand about this story. It wasn't really about the money. It was never about the money. It was about what Tiffany thought of me. It was about the fact that she looked at 11 years of marriage, 2 years of caregiving, of sacrifice and love and showing up, and she decided none of that counted. She decided I was just a guest. An outsider. Someone to be removed from the equation. And Frank, a quiet, tough, no-nonsense man who said, "I love you," maybe twice in his entire life, Frank disagreed. He didn't make a big speech. He didn't confront Tiffany. He just sat in his bedroom on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, looked me in the eye, and said, "You're my son-in-law, Mike. That means something to me." And then he did what any good father would do. He protected his family. The Tennessee land is still ours. The farmhouse has a new roof now. We used some of the insurance money. There's a vegetable garden where there used to be weeds. And right at the edge of the creek, where the big oak tree leans over the water, Claire hung a wooden sign that says Frank's Corner. That's where she goes to have her coffee in the mornings. That's where she cried the hardest after he died. And that's where she laughs the most now, watching our dog try and fail to catch fish in the creek. Frank would have loved it. As for Tiffany, she kept what Frank left her in the will. The Memphis house. Some accounts. It wasn't nothing. It was actually substantial. But it was never enough for her, because what she really wanted was to win. She wanted to take something from us. And she walked away with nothing she didn't already have. While we walked away with everything that mattered. Sometimes the best revenge isn't doing anything dramatic. It's just being prepared. Quietly. Patiently. And letting the person who underestimated you find out they were wrong, one missed call at a time. If you've ever been counted out by someone who thought you had no power, if someone ever looked at you and said you don't belong here, just remember. The people who try to cut you off are usually the most afraid of what you're actually capable of. Stay patient. Stay smart. And let them make the first move. Because 58 missed calls will tell you everything you need to know about who really had the power all along. Thanks for watching. If this story hit you, drop a comment below. And if you know someone who's been counted out by family, share this with them. They need to hear it.